how do you hire people? It's like, how do you find good friends? How do you find good relationships? And in this specific case, how do you hire good people? Engineers, executive, all of it.
One thing is I've done a lot of reps on hiring at this point. So Coinbase has about 5,000 people. Probably the first 500 people or something, maybe in that range. I interviewed every single one of those, but you have to remember there's probably like, I don't know, on average, maybe 10 people that we went in the process for every one we hired or something. So it was like, by the time that we had 500 employees, I had done like 5,000 interviews or something. I was like very burned out at interviews. I had been doing, some days I did like 7 interviews in a day, or maybe, you would do lots of interviews. Maybe you wouldn't get burned out, but different kind of interviews.
Very different. Very different.
Yeah.
Very different because you're, so first of all, most of your interviews lead to rejection.
Yeah.
Which is also exhausting.
Yeah. And there's a whole part of the interview which is about candidate experience, right? Sometimes it's not the right person, but you want to make sure they have a good experience.
Yes.
Like if you're just exhausted and you're on your 6th interview and you're like, well, thanks for coming in, and you wrap and then like you're going to create a detractor, someone who's out there like, fuck that company, or Brian was rude to me or whatever. So I had to work on that a little bit in the early days because I was doing so many interviews. Like I needed to make sure that when people came in, I was like, made them feel comfortable. Asked them a couple of like warm-up questions, just like, oh, how was it getting in the office? Like, did you find it okay? And like, what have you been up to this week? And not just like, like a factory assembly line, like boom, 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 like run. So yeah.
But also there's a moment, because I've interviewed a bunch of people for like teams and stuff.
Yeah.
There's also a moment when you early on know it's not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And you still have to land that plane and all that kind of stuff. And that could get really, really, really exhausting. So yeah, anyway, sorry. So
yeah, so basically, we've tried so many things over the years to make interviews more efficient because it's a huge time sink for the team. So we basically will usually get them down to like 25 minutes. I've seen if you're trying to hire like a big team, let's say, of people who are like contractors or something, not necessarily full-time employees. I've seen people actually do 10-minute interviews. You can even interview like 1,000 people almost like in a week or something. I'm not sure if that quite works out, but let me a little less than that. But you can basically get six done in an hour if you're I need to get a team of 30 contractors for whatever purpose. But if you're talking about full-time employees, I usually do like 25-minute. You're oftentimes like one thing we've done is we'll put like a Google form online, and it's like put some basic hurdles in there, like ask them to put in an answer which you can check in a spreadsheet if it was correct or not. And like there was some funny examples in the early days of Coinbase where we put in like brain teasers and stuff, but we don't do that anymore. We do like normal interviews. We do references. The kinds of things I ask in interviews, it's usually like, I like to think about what do we need this person to accomplish in this role, right? And get really specific about that. It's like usually something pretty hard. And then I'll ask them a question. It's like, tell me about a time you did X. Mm-hmm. And or tell me about the hardest kind of problem you've had to solve in Y. And what did you do specifically to overcome it, right? So I'm asking to see if they can actually do the stuff we need to get done. But then I'm also kind of asking culture questions if I'm interviewing for that. And so I'm trying to see like, are they concise communicators? Can they just give me a clear answer and stop talking? Some people like ramble on for like 5-10 minutes if you ask the first question. Some people are, they're interrupters, like church of interruption. So like they won't stop talking until you interrupt them, which for me, I'm always patient and I wait. So that's weird. I'm looking to see for humility too. Like, I'll ask people, well, tell me about a time something went really wrong, like you had conflict with someone on a team, or and what I'm kind of looking for is, were they part of the solution, or are they still holding on to like blame and criticism about that and be like, well, I told them it shouldn't do that way, but they didn't listen to me. And, these are all like bad signs. So I'm looking for, can they get the job done? Will they work together on a team? Can they communicate effectively? Do they fit into our cultural values? And, those kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, there's, cause I've, even for help with this podcast here, but also at MIT and so on, I've done a bunch of hiring, and I was always looking for, you said brain teasers, all kinds of simple questions that can reveal a lot of information, and it's always been challenging. I still ask this question, but do you think it's better to work hard or work smart? And I had this idea that that I think I've matured about, which is I kind of believe that people who say work smart on that question don't actually work smart. So the right textbook answer is it's better to work smart. But the reality is it's people that haven't actually ever done anything that say work smart. They're like they haven't really struggled, because my general belief at the time was in order to discover what it means to work smart, to be efficient, you have to work your ass off. So you have to really fail a lot, and failure feels like hard work. And so I was always suspicious of people that would say work smart. I would want to interrogate that question. But then I also, have learned that there is people that are just exceptionally efficient. They really do know what it means to work smart, even at a young age. And so, like, you can't just disqualify based on that. You have to dig in deeper. But some of the most interesting people I've ever worked with would say work hard unapologetically. And they're usually the ones that know how to be efficient, it's just an interesting thing like that. And I've always searched for questions of that nature to see, can I get a person to reveal something profound about them in as brief of a question as possible. And and then of course there's basic attention to detail and brain teasers and stuff like that, depending on the role, programming and so on, to see can they solve a tricky puzzle and do so, like one that doesn't require a lot of effort, but requires a certain non-linear way of thinking. Is there some, I mean, maybe you don't want to reveal, but is there some questions that you sometimes find yourself leaning on? You said, like, how did you solve a hard problem in your past, and have them talk through it? That's one.
We started with brain teasers periodically at Coinbase, and we got away from that relatively quickly. And I think it's a tough one, because I actually think it does show how somebody kind of performs under pressure, but I don't think it's a super reliable indicator, because there's some people who are really good at what the typical work situation, but that's not a typical work situation where somebody puts you on the spot, like in a live interview. And sometimes people get nervous and they can't think clearly, and like they don't have their computer in front of them or whatever they normally use. So yeah, I'm a little skeptical now of the brain teaser thing. There is a whole question about, like, a lot of universities are getting rid of entrance exams. So if you're hiring right out of universities, sometimes it's becoming a less reliable indicator of, like, are they in that university? And so I've heard some companies, we haven't done this yet, but I've heard some companies are actually creating their own, like, for college grads, like their own basically exams, like standardized testing, almost to get people in the door, because the degree almost like doesn't mean what it used to, which is a whole topic. But
that's fascinating, because it's fascinating both for them, because it's not just about you trying to hire a great team. It's also to help them find the right place to work at.
Yeah.
It's like a two-way